absolutely. Anyway, Mr. Clement, or should I say Derek, how are you this week?
Good morning. I'm fine, thank you. Great to be back. And of course, great to have Jeff back on, which is fantastic.
Brilliant. Thank you, sir. Great to have you on. I heard the show last week at the Afro show, and I learned so much about the history of black hair that you mentioned that way started. Right?
That was the book, isn't it? The book here, sir.
Can you hear me?
I have to say, Jeff, I'm hearing a kind of feedback on my end. I hope it's not me. Is it okay? Yeah, it's slightly feedback.
Okay, on our end, it's quite clear.
Okay.
So I'm not quite sure if you're near to some audio settings or, if you're near to something. Maybe you turn your volume down a little bit.
Okay, I'll do that.
Maybe that's what it is.
Okay, is it better now?
It's been fine on our end.
Okay, it's good. Yeah,
your end.
yeah, I could hear it. I can hear you now clearly. Yes, Jeff, all's good. Thank you. Great to have you back.
Thank you, sir. And Jim.
Anyway, just to let you know as well, Derek, the feedback from last week in terms of information being given out was very, very positive. The people that were messaging through, like I said to you earlier, when I put the recording up on Mixcloud, it received a number of listens. People are really intrigued to hear the background to Afro era and to well-being. It was really an interesting topic.
Yes. It's Afro hair, as I say, it's a massive phenomenon. It's our hair. It links us all together. It's the first thing we see when you see a sister or brother coming. You see their hair. And back in the day, you remember the 70s. I'm not sure how old you are, JENNISIS, but I'm sure Jeff and I sort of remember those days. The big afros. It sort of gave us a lot more. It empowered us, so to speak. But let me first say, before I start, again, I'm going to give thanks to the great father of the Black History Month. Okay, a man by the name of Carter G. Woodson. He was the guy who founded the Afro Black History Month, which was set up in 1926 to designate the time for and to promote and educate Black people about themselves, about their history. Okay, it's nice to know that, as the African proverb goes, until the lion learns to write, we shall always hear the hunter's tale. So now we are writing our story, and we are now in charge of the narrative. It's huge that we are in control of our own narrative now.
Oh, very much so, very, very much so. And like I said, it's good to hear all those iconic figures that you mentioned last week. That kind of started the Afro hair and well-being movement. It's really interesting, and one of the things that kind of stuck out to me, and I was listening to it again on the recording, was the information that you gave about the kind rollers. Because that was just so intriguing. Because like I said, I've heard that terminology so many times growing up, but didn't understand where it actually came from.
Yeah, there's so much to our history. There's so much, and it's so great to see us now shedding light on our past. Our children need to know how beautiful, how exuberant the culture is. For a long time, there was an embargo. The embargo has been lifted now, so people like you and me and Jeff and our antecedents are telling stories either by books and movies. We're just not stopping. We're just empowering our children. And so it's a great time to be alive. It's a great time to be on this side of history. It's brilliant.
Sorry, I was to ask a question, but he just started coughing and spluttering right there. I got to slap him in.
Hope Jeff still isn't sick. Jeff. Go on.
But because last week we kind of looked at the history of Afro hair and well-being, and during our discussion, one of the topics that we wanted to bring forward was women renewal and empowerment today. So yeah, it would be nice to kind of look at the hair care movement in terms of women, how they kind of took control of their hair, what they wanted to do with it. But also, as I said to you, interestingly enough, one of the listeners messaged me through today, and they were like, Jen, is there any reason why there's mainly men on the panel and only one female. And you know what? It didn't actually click to me to look at that. I just saw the title and I thought, yeah, let's run with this. But then I thought, I have to message him and say, you know what, I'm going to have to just dominate this discussion, because women know more about their hair than men know about their hair. It's a bit, Jeffrey's about to disagree with me.
No, I'm not going to agree with you. Men normally have 2 pounds, long or short or whatever. All the other pounds that men have is because of, if I'm right, Indian, decades. Am I right, Eric?
I mean, I tend to agree. But let me also say that we're not trying to remove the spotlight from the sisters, from the queens, from the empresses. Of course not. I mean, we call ourselves in our brand the gatekeepers of the Afro realm. So we are, the women are, in our opinion, are the founders. All of the interesting things about hair comes from the females, from the mothers, from the matriarch. So it just so happens that, of course, it's a topic of mine that I do enjoy, and of course, I call myself an Afro hair historian, and so it's all part of our collective. It just happens to be a guy giving the information, but there are lots of women in our brand, our artistic team, and they also could give a talk on the very topic. But again, this is not something that's a bit dubious. It is just one of those things, unfortunately.
So when you come with the perspective of women, when you talk about women and renewal, what does that mean to yourself being a male hairstylist? What does that mean for you?
Well, my job is to help the women to remember. So it's very, very important, right? That they were the ones who have rewarded themselves and empowered themselves about the hair care, right? But what's interesting about the black hair movement now, it is women who are now rewarding and empowering themselves. Okay, so so the topic collapsing the trust to regain your tress. I don't think many people have thought about this, but I've spent many, many years thinking about this, and I do practice it. Now, I know in my culture, as a kid, as a young man, I see my mother do my sister's hair. I see my grandmother do my mother's hair. I see all the female members of the family care for their children's hair. And of course, women are the ones we are talking about. Okay, so obviously, at what point in time did our women left the caring hands of their mothers and their grandmothers and their aunts and the matriarchs, and started knocking people's doors? You know who I'm talking about, Genesis. They're there. I'm not going to say anything because we can't, we live in a world where it's all about entrepreneurship and business. And if a man opens a shop on the high street and he's targeting his goods at one particular segment of the community, good luck to him, right? But, there's been a long time when we go knocking people's doors in their shops and telling complete strangers about our hair woes and quandaries. Okay, and that should come from us. That should come from our mothers or aunts or sisters. Okay, we know who they are. They're there on the high street, and of course, they want to dominate the industry and sell our women products. And a lot of the times, we now know, the women have now realized that the products that they were selling us is absolutely is not good for the hair. I'm not saying all products are not good. I'm just saying that there are some dubious chemicals in products that has been really creating havoc on our women's hair. And they've taken a stand, and hence the reason why we have the natural hair movement. The natural hair movement allows us to go back. It's a bit like Sankofa. Go back to get it. And so going back means let's collapse the trust, in other words, the trust we have in others, to regain our tress. Our tress is our hair.
Quick one. I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to give help with you. When did the hair of in terms of the black hair?
When did the natural hair, sorry, I didn't hear the Jeff. Did you say when did the natural hair movement kicked off?
When did the hair review industry really got big, or basically got so interesting that all the big companies now invest in black hair review? Because at one point it was mainly, as far as I could see in the UK, it was just small hairdressing and it was European shops doing European styles, but black hair music wasn't as big. So when did that first start? When did it really came to the front where black hair music was a big commodity?
Well, I mean, Jeff, you're right. I mean, our industry has always been the moms and pops on the high streets. Your mother, Miss Pauline Haywood, who was a great friend of mine, of course, and one of my greatest admirers and one of my people who inspired me. She did hairdressing back in the day in Thornton Heath. And so all over London, you had sort of moms and pop salons, Shepherd's Bush, Brixton, Clapham, Peckham, the Harlesden. We know who they are, where they are, all these moms and pops, and they controlled the industry in those days. It was very much part of the, on a community level. So on a, so we had it locked in our communities. Okay, now people are watching us constantly. It's like hip hop music. It's like sort of soca. It's like reggae music. You know what happens? People see the money to be made, and of course it gets monetized. So big brand steps in, and big brands would obviously buy out. So a lot of the black brands that were created by black people has been bought out by major brands. You know who they are: the Procters and Gamble's, the Johnsons and Johnsons, even the L'Oreal's, the Wellers. They watch our community. They see what we are doing. They see the money that can be made, and that goes for any given sector: music, fashion, food. An example of food. Most of our foods from the Caribbean, most of our cultural foods are not being made by us. It's other people making it because they recognize, and we're the biggest consumer. So obviously, other brands, people step in and take it over and buy it from you and sell it back to you.
Because I can remember my mother, God rest her soul, when she was alive, she started the shop when she was and I used to laugh, remember, She used to help with there practically. And as you said quite rightly, a lot of the hairdressing were very community, where a lot of individual people were doing different parts. But I noticed, I'm not sure what year or when it was, I noticed that all of a sudden the industry changed in the sense that when they were selling products for black hair, all of a sudden you had European-looking black hair, as I call it, the weave. So the Afro disappeared, the wet look disappeared, and then it was the weave, the long, and then it all changed, and it just kind of went crazy. From then, it's just escalated to the point where it is now. And I don't know what year that was.
Sorry, I'm not thinking about the year as such. What I'm thinking about is that as certain movements were taking place, and I can only just name America as being one of the capitals of the movement. So we had the Angela Davis time when they had the Afros. You had the Supremes time where it was like, the relaxed and all the big wigs and stuff like that. So it just seems like different trends came with different eras or different decades. That's what it seems to me. You know what I mean? Until we actually get to the part where we are now, which is kind of a big mix of natural and not unnatural. Or that's not the right word, but yeah, a mix of natural and, additions, accessories, weaves and stuff to the hair. What do you think, Derek?
No, you're perfectly right, Genesis. You gave a wonderful synopsis on the history, very briefly, but again, back to the topic at hand, collapsing the trust to regain their trust. And the natural movement allows and empowers the black woman to take control of her own hair. So the natural hair movement is, in effect, a windfall for Afro hair and the people who wear it. Because it means if you go back, like Sankofa says, if you go back, then it means that you are in control. If you're relying on others to manufacture and to create these accessories for you, be it a wig or a weave or whatever, invariably we don't have, we're not a mechanized society as far as I'm concerned in the Caribbean or in Africa. So some of the big manufacturers are going to come from Japan, China, etc., India, even India. And so we go looking for the goods wherever we need to have them. But going back to the natural hair movement, it's the end game. It is the end game for other people, because you'll see a lot of the high street shops that sells beauty products now are not selling product anymore because this system sister she's wearing her own hair on her head, and she's looking at the community, people like myself who manufacture products, who formulate products to provide the products for themselves, you see? And so I believe Afro hair needs to be armored with products that's not toxic, but has, as I said last week, the phytonutrients and the plant base, all those things that are natural, because you should and supposed to use products that are indigenous to you. Bear in mind, hair products supposed to be vitamins or natural oils. And so these natural oils should come from our community, should come from our indigenous society, as opposed to using toxic and harmful, nefarious products that's going to cause harm and damage to our hair. And you know what they are. These are the parabens and the lauryl sulfates. These chemicals do irreparable damage to our women's hair. One of them being alopecia. At the middle of the crown, you see a lot of black women now, their hair is falling off because of these harsh chemicals. So we have to go back. And that's why I said going back, like Sankofa says, to get it.
Okay, cool. Because I was just about to ask, actually, as you were speaking, I was just looking at the topic that we're discussing today in terms of, you know, women empowerment and renewal. I just wanted to go back to the renewal part. So you just mentioned a little bit about going back and looking at the type of things that we used to do to our hair. You mentioned about alopecia and the crown of the female's head that, you know, starting to disappear and stuff like that. Is this where the renewal now comes in, because we're starting to find all these things that we've been doing to our hair is actually damaging it? Because I know one of the things that happens is, apart from the crown alopecia that there is, there's also the, you know, where you do put in the extensions or the weaves, or you might plait too tight and you pull the hair. So it's almost like stress alopecia that happens, where the follicles actually come away from the side of the head, but you do it too tight. So in terms of the renewal, what does that mean for you? What does it mean to you?
All renewal simply means renaissance, revival. As I said before, remembering. Remember. We have got to go back in our consciousness and remember. Everything is in us. Okay? So we got to go back in order to remember, to reinvent. Okay? So because we've had a very rich history of Afro hair, both here and across the pond. That's in the USA. Okay, we could go back as far as Africa, where everything began. Okay, and then of course, because of the Atlantic so-called slave trade, which I prefer to refer to it as, you know, we were prisoners of war brought across the pond and all over the world. So did our techniques came. So you know, we started from people like Madam C.J. Walker, who invented in the 1800s things like conditioners. Okay, and as I said, the great Carmen Englands, but. So, you know, renewal simply means renaissance. So this is a renaissance, and it means that the dominant aspect of our culture right now is the natural hair movement, and it couldn't have come at a better time.
Brilliant. I hear that. And I just want to add, actually, you know what I mean, being the only female on the panel today, you know what I mean, I just wanted to add, or just to recognize as well, like, because I was watching a few programs recently, and, you know, women's hair has gone through a load of different things. I can remember, like, growing up, you know, there was the wet look, there was the straightening, hot combing. That's all right. It was about the women. So there was the wet look, there was the straightening, there was the hot combing, there was the weave, there's the extensions. You know, there's the Afro, it's going through to the lock. But one of the things, and I think it suits, so there's some women that just have the head shape for it, is where they've actually just removed the tresses. They're wearing their hair, you know what I mean, number one haircut, as the man will call it in the barbers, you know what I mean, all going completely bald. You know what I mean? And for me, that when I see that is a huge empowerment. Not just having the natural hair, actually, women wearing their hair in the styles that they want to wear it is empowerment enough. Because there's not people telling them, well, you've got to hide your hair or you've got to wear it in a certain way. They can choose how they want to bring themselves across, how they want to look. You know, if they want to play a part, have a super ego, whatever, they can just change their hair and do it. But it is just so empowering to see that there are women, and it's not because it's alopecia based, but there are women that want to go out and just say, you know what, I just want to get rid of this hair. Do you have a lot of people that come into your salons, for example, and they just want to just remove
I mean, loads. And again, it's back to that empowerment. Why? Because Genesis, you remember a lot of our sensibilities were largely infused with British and colonial sensibilities. A lot of our things, how we thought, how we behave, we were to a large extent emulating the British cultural norms, wanting to do this and that to our hair. But now women of black women were just simply, because of this defiance. We've always had that defiance in us, but as I said, there's an embargo. We kind of clamped it down, and people felt a lot of the time you had this self-hating and self-loathing attitude back in the day. So now you have more of a self-loving environment now. Women just love themselves, so their hair doesn't have to be manipulated too many times to impress anyone or to conform to a certain environment. So you're right. So the term, the big chop, has become very fashionable. Women will go into a barber shop, they're going to the hairdressers, please take this thing off. And they will start the journey all over again. And within months, their hair would come all back because the hair is now all natural. All right. And one of the good things about this movement is that it shows women for the first time that the hair can and does grow. It's hard to grow your hair when it's imbued with lots of chemicals on it. It's difficult. Okay, but if the hair is left alone and allowed to grow, we see what the Rastas have been doing for centuries. They've told us that your hair can grow. Just leave it alone. Let it be.
Definitely. I mean, I've been growing my locks for, 20 plus years, let's just say that. And I think it's got to a stage, I don't know if it stops growing, but I think it's got to a stage where it's not, I don't think it will get down to the back of my knees, which I probably would trim it if it got to the back of my knees. But that, for me, that was always something that I found very empowering. Like, I can remember being 15, 16, and I wanted to lock my hair at that point. And the reason why I didn't, because there were so many different things going on with hair at that time. I'll do it after I had the wet look. I'll do it after I've had the weave. I wanted to experiment with everything else. But I also think it was more about maturity and where I was at that particular point. Because once I decided that I was going to lock my hair, I just thought to myself, once I do it, that is it. You know what I mean? I'm not going to be shaving it off. I'm not going to be going back to, doing weaves and stuff. The locks is going to be it. But for me, I found that quite empowering. But I think another reason why I didn't do it as earlier is because, like you mentioned a little bit before, about stigma, how people were viewed because of certain hairstyles that they had. I can remember people talking about, the Dottie Rastaman, for example, and it was those kind of comments that, I've always seen the dreads that I used to see around my areas when I was growing up as very conscious, very enlightening, very spiritual, X, Y, and Z, and that's what I was drawn for. The looks were secondary, to be quite honest. But I think for women anyway, there comes a point where you reach a certain point in life, and sometimes it takes certain things to happen, and sometimes very often it can be a traumatic thing or a move that makes somebody decide to change their hair. Like I decided to change my hair after the loss of my mum. I'd gone through everything else. And it was at that point I just thought to myself, no, I'm ready to do this. I've wanted to do it since I was 16, but now I feel ready. You know what I mean? So do you find that a lot of women will come into, for example, your salon after maybe a loss or a bereavement or a relationship breakdown, and they just say, you know what, I don't want to have this style anymore because it reminds you of this part of my past. I want to go in another direction.
Oh, absolutely, Genesis, and thank you for that little synopsis regarding how you moved into to become a Rasta, or to wear your hair in locks. Sorry, but I mean, it's absolutely true. But again, I'll continue to say that what's remarkable about the natural hair movement, black women have recreated the best and truest version of themselves. They're not trying to please anyone, and moreover, they're using sustainable ingredients, right, to insensitize themselves and the growth of the hair. And what's nice about it, we're now remembering things of the past. As I said last week, cocoa butter, shea butter, coconut oil. These are all sustainable. These are all foods. And products, and these oils are really food-based. Shea butter is a food. And another thing I say to my clients, you don't have to use it on your hair alone. You could consume it. Because hair grows at a cellular level. If you are going to heal and grow and restore, revitalize, rejuvenate your hair, then you could drink the coconut oil. So my mother used to always say, if you can't drink it, don't use it. Okay? Jamaican black castor oil is the buzzword at the moment. It's the elixir of oils because it has these oils and these butters. They've got amazing ingredients. As I said last week, all of them are antibacterial, antifungal, anti-carcinogenic, antimicrobial. And we need those elements there to protect us because we're living in a time where there are lots of fallouts. You know what they are? The pathogens in the atmosphere are killing our people. So we need to protect our scalp and our skin. We need to armor our scalp and our skins with natural, sustainable products. And we look back, as I said, Sankofa, you go back to get it. And where do you go? You go back to the Caribbean, you go back to Africa, where all the good goodies are.
Quick one. Could you explain cellular?
Cellular?
What do you mean? Before you mentioned about hair begins at a cellular level. What do you mean by that?
Well, the hair grows with, okay, so your hair has its own ecosystem. It doesn't need our intervention, really. And I think the Rastas have proven that. What you have found in the Caribbean with the Rasta movement, they use natural things on the hair, like the single Bible, for example, right? Like how we eat, we eat. So when we say cellular, the hair has its own ecosystem. That means within the scalp area, there's something called the sebaceous glands. There's lots of cells and tissues and things around the hair cell, the hair follicle, and the base of the hair in the scalp. Right, there are a numerous network of cells and vessels and blood this and blood that, sebaceous glands. The sebaceous glands practically provide for the hair its nutrient. It's called sebum. Okay, so the hair now grows on the inside and it pushes its way outside in the hair follicle and comes into the world. So the hair on the inside is relying on the cells, cellular foods we eat. So hair grows. So when I say hair grows from a cellular level, the things we eat are the things that's going to help the hair to be nourished. Okay? And also, hence the reason why hair growth needs us to be holistic. So your hair growth will rely on how you are physically, how you are spiritually, how you are mentally, how you are psychologically. And so if you're holistic, if you're sick, and you're not well, your hair would suffer. It's going to be traumatized. So it's all in the inside, Jeff and Genesis. When the hair comes out into the world, it is dead. It's just, the hair shaft is dead. It's called the hair shaft. You could bite your hair, you could pinch your hair shaft, you could cut your hair shaft. It wouldn't bleed. You won't cry. You won't feel any pain. The only pain you may feel would be vanity because, my hair is growing. But the hair grows inside and it pushes its way outside. And on the inside, it relies on food, nutrient. Hence the reason why I talk about phytonutrient. When you use those nutrients on your scalp and on your hair, bear in mind it's the scalp we're concerned about, the skin, not the hair shaft. The hair shaft does need products like we used to call it grease back in the day. I call it food now. It does need these products to protect the hair. So we talk about protective hair styling, for example. If we're doing a blow dry, we would use certain foods to protect the hair shaft so it doesn't get burnt. Okay, but what you need to really think about is that if you are on a good, healthy diet and you're holistic, you're wholesome, your hair will grow in leaps and bounds. But all hair grows. They grow at different levels. Some people hair grows and coil back, but hair grows. All hair type grows.
The only thing I'm gonna ask or ask, you said that the hair, when it comes down, you can't feel it, but the hair is actually on the inside of your head. When it goes out, it's like the waist. Am I right? Did you hear the waist on your head, or explain that a little bit? So what comes out, is that the waist of the hair, so the proper hair is on the inside?
No. If the hair, as I said, the hair has its own ecosystem, and that system is going to help the hair to maintain itself, to feed the hair with water. You remember, it's at the blood within the scalp. You've got blood streams at the base of the hair. cells, right? And these, and you've got the major pumping machine, like it's like a reservoir, the sebaceous gland, and the sebaceous gland is manufacturing sebum that seeps through and onto the hair shaft to protect and feed the hair. If you think of sebum, in the olden days, sebum was used to condition your hair, and they got the sebum from the sheep. So when you see your sheep farmer, your farmer sharing a sheep, they'll extract from the sheep's coat sebum, and that will be manufactured into a conditioner. Okay, so that is designed now. So we're now obviously mimicking nature. We're making the sebum in the form of a conditioner or oils or sheens or sprays to protect the hair shaft from the elements. Okay, so it's not really waste, Jeff. It's really it's food. It's and you notice, so from the point of view of waste, I guess it can become a waste if you become a victim of dandruff. Okay, so that means your scalp is producing excessive amount of sebum, and it stays on the scalp. And in many cases, if you are not well, you see some people got this really thick layers and layers of sebum, and it's dandruff. And of course, that's a condition. But under normal circumstances, your hair's, it's producing sweat. Your sweat glands produce sweat to cool the body. The sebum is produced to coat the hair. But we need to help the hair at the end of the day. So hence the reason why we make products. Cosmetics. The cosmetic companies understand that, and so they manufacture products to sustain our hair for us.
Okay, as you're describing it, actually, it just gives me a picture of, for example, the rainforest or just the earth itself. You know what I mean? And the hair follicle, like the earth. You know what I mean? You plant seeds into the earth. That's watered, that's nourished, that's fed. The soil then allows the plants or the hair to grow. And in order to maintain its growth, you have to make sure that you feed it the right conditions or feed it the right nutrients into the hair. That's what it sounds like to me as I'm hearing it.
Well said, Genesis. Well said, Jen. I mean, there's a symbiotic relationship between nature and us. Nature is the creator. And if you may allow me to extend a really radical view, I hope my viewers or your viewers don't get upset. For God so loved the world, He provided His only begotten SUN, and it's that nature that keeps us alive. Without the sun, we'll all be dead. It'll be dark. You know what I'm saying? So nature, there's that symbiotic relationship with nature, and nature provides all our needs.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned also about the sebum that you find in the hair, and that you said that the sebum you can. It was like you got the farmer would get that from the sheep.
Yes.
And they would use that in product. Is that similar to? Because I remember seeing this on some certain products that I would buy. You'd find, for example, conditioner or hair products with placenta in it, and I'm trying to determine, and I always wondered, is placenta a different type of placenta that as different from the placenta that you find in the womb, or was it the same thing? Just using that.
Oh, I mean, people went as far as using placenta. Back in the day, placenta was very fashionable. So there's plant placenta, there's human placenta. I know, in fact, just recently I saw something on TV where somebody was saying that they're using a skin cream from the baby's testicles to ensure that the skin is nourished. So yeah, placenta was a major trend back in the day. I don't think it's as fashionable now. I think today what people want more than anything else, since the natural hair movement is such a huge movement, what women are looking for is those three fundamental things: moisture, hydration, and nutrients. And so moisturizers are massive in the market now. I do a moisturizer that's very fashionable and selling, by leaps and bounds. We also do a hydrator. So those words are now fashionable: hydrating the hair and moisturizing the hair. Because people talk about, remember we talked about that last week, porosity, high porosity, low porosity. So if your hair is not somehow, it drinks up a lot of moisture, you just need to apply lots to the hair, because some people's hair drinks more than than the other. But yeah, placenta was a massive thing back in the 70s. I remember as a young hairdresser, we used to break the bottles, little vials of placenta, and but I think that was plant placenta back in the day. I don't think it's human placenta, but people alluded to the fact that some of them were human placenta, and I guess placenta is life, isn't it?
And the thing is, like, I mean, I wouldn't actually be surprised if it was, I'll be disgusted, but I wouldn't actually be surprised if it was, because I remember also back in the day, and maybe this is part of the renewal or the empowerment of women, because, like, I know I have heard of women that have, after giving birth to their child, you know what I mean, after the placenta was delivered, some people used to take the placenta back home and they used to fry that and eat that because it had so much nutrients in it. You know what I mean?
Well,
it wouldn't surprise me if some of it would be in here, because if you can go back into the wood, there's probably some good in it. I mean, I ain't gonna try it myself.
Well, I mean, it's nothing new. I mean, you know, we talk about caviar. I mean, it's eggs from the strange fish. I mean, bees, honey is the same thing. You get honey from the bees. You can argue honey is the bees' waste. I mean, you know, you think of all the other things. I mean, look at the Caribbean, for example, our food. I mean, people talk about cow cod. You know, people talk about oxtail. I mean, all these things from animals, and they go towards nourishing our bodies. However, if you're plant-based, if you're vegan, then all of your goodies come from plants. You know, plants and vegetables. You know, but
are you actually being...
Sorry,
Derek. Being serious about honey being the bee's waste?
Well, I mean, bees make honey. Where does it come from? From the inside of the bee.
You know what? I don't know. I don't know if there's a benefit to being enlightened or not. Because, like,
well, I mean,
Genesis,
people drink milk. People drink milk. Milk comes from the cow. Milk is meant to be for the cows, for the calves, but people consume milk by the gallons. That's how it is, and it's coming from somewhere. I mean, some people would argue that carnation milk is made from cow seed. You know, the cows. What's it? You know.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, carnation milk. But besides, I mean, let's not stray. There's no other race on the planet whose hair means so much to them, okay, other than our people. Our hair means a lot to us. It's empowerment, isn't it? I mean, when you think of, when you see another race, there's no natural desire or urge to touch their hair. But for some peculiar reason, when people see sisters and brothers, there's this urge, there's this desire to touch it and to feel it. What is that? Okay, and you know, it's amazing. There's no other race on the planet who just had a new act called the Crown Act. So our hair has gone through some amazing history. I mean, can you imagine back in the day? We talked about that last week. A law was literally passed. A law was passed that forbade Black women to wear their hair in public. And guess what the reason was? The reason was women of the South in Louisiana back in the 1700s felt that Black women looked so beautiful, their hair looked so gorgeous, that they were going to attract their suitors. And they passed a law to hide the hair. And so, you know, bunks forward another few, centuries later, we have a law passed in 2019 called the Crown Act. And that, again, it means that, you know, our hair has to be given an opportunity to express itself, and people shouldn't touch it, and people shouldn't deny you how to wear your hairstyles in the workplace. A long time, people say you can't wear your locks, you can't wear your afro, you couldn't wear your braid, you couldn't... Oh, my God, no other race on the planet has these issues with their hair. So there has to be something in the hair that people are frightened of or admire. It's nature itself.
Yeah, it's very true. But actually, you're just saying what you're just saying, and there's something else just saying to me. You know, it's like you mentioned previously, like, you know, Black women were not allowed or permitted to wear their hair in public and therefore had to wear it under the wrap. Is that where the wrap evolves from eventually? Because, like, there are some beautiful wraps out there now about the way that women tie their hair. And I think this is going back again into reclaiming. There's certain things I don't like being reclaimed, but you know what I mean? When I think about the wrap and, you know, I think about like the way that the African women tie their hair and they wrap their hair and now you can actually buy a bonnet that has actually got its own wrap on it, and you can wrap your own hair and make it the styles easier for you to do. But those also look beautiful. But for me, it's almost like something, when I think about it now, something that was meant to restrict us has now even shown the beauty of the black woman even more. Because I find when I see a woman with her hair wrapped up, and it looks so elegant, so regal.
Yeah, I mean, I like to look at the positive, and you're perfectly right, Genesis. I like to look at the positive, and that's how we are as a people. We turn things around. I mean, think of carnival. Carnival is essentially a European concept, isn't it? It's a European construct, and we took it and completely revitalized it. You think of what they did back in the day to forbade women to wear their hair, and they turned it around. They ensured that the hair, while wearing the scarves to cover their hair, from these white suitors who would have been attracted to the black women, and were that's what the white women felt. Our men. The white men were looking at the black women because their hair looked so gorgeous and they looked so beautiful that they had to cover it up. And so the women then literally transformed the whole game plan, end game. They really made the wraps look gorgeous. I don't think it's the same as the gele, which is worn in West Africa, in Nigeria. So then Nigerian women wear this beautiful geles. I think that's part of their culture. Okay, because bear in mind, nothing is new. As I said, we are able to remember. So I presume when you think of the Tigan Law episode, it wouldn't have been difficult for the women then to transform those wrap into a beautiful array of wonderful designs and styles, because that's who we are. Because that was right out of the episode of slavery. Okay, right there in the 1700s.
Could you repeat that word that you said? Was it Tigan Law, did you say?
Tigan, Tigon, Tigan Law, 1786, Louisiana. That was when it started, and it started under the most peculiar means. It's nothing to do with us, nothing to do with our antecedents, nothing to do with our ancestors. It's simply the problem that other people had back in the day, and that problem exists even up until quite recently. The 70s and the 80s, you couldn't walk into a corporate office with a massive afro. These people felt uncomfortable. The sheer beauty of the afro, the sheer opulence and royalty of the locks, right? The sheer beauty of the fade. Every other race wearing fades now, right? This is black people are just a wonderful, a beautiful race in all shades, all sizes. And so we do tend to disturb the equation whenever we walk into a place. You see us coming, man. It's just the beauty of black people. Yeah, I mean, remember, we're the first people on the planet. So obviously, wherever we are, it's endgame.
It's just really interesting. Can I just take time out just to say, Carmen is locked into the show. She says it's very, very interesting. She's really appreciating it. John has also said this, about the spirituality of the hair and of the locks. There was another message that came through. TG, big shouts out to you. And School Bus Angie, big blessings goes out to you. Jackie as well. And greetings goes out to you. Like the information, like even when you just mentioned just now, the Tiglan Law, I literally had to just go online just now and just look this up, because I've never heard of it. You know what I mean? And that I suppose that in terms of listening to the insight that you have, the experience that you have, has really awakened me anyway to certain parts of the hair game realm and the laws and things that were out there that I was completely unaware of. And I'm not saying that everybody should know everything about what's going on out there, but I've just found it really, really interesting. So I really do appreciate, the knowledge and the wealth of knowledge that you have given. Just to quickly go back and just to ask, because part of it was the empowerment of women. I'm kind of feeling like, have we given some of our power away in terms of, there's a lot of, and just nothing against you, there's nothing against you, Derek. There seems to be a lot of men now that are doing ladies' hair. You know what I mean? Was there a particular time that it was felt that, we're going to let go of it and not look into it so much ourselves, and the men decided, let us get into this industry and look after our women, so to speak? When did the transition come?
Hairdressing is a craft. It's a skill, it's a trade. As I said last week, how did I find hairdressing? I caught up in that. We talked about racism back in the day. As a young, we all experienced racism, and more so, we all experienced institutionalized racism. I mean, I could clearly recognize the difference in my school as a young lad in Acton in West London, and I swore to myself, just silently, that I'm watching this and watching the nonsense that's taking place. And I said to myself, when I leave school. If I left school, I went to do engineering at Twickenham College. I went to Hounslow Borough College. I did my O levels. I did engineering. I did electrical engineering. I did the things that young boys did back in the day at school. I mean, and bear in mind, your parents wouldn't have you do any other thing. I mean, if I said to my mother, doing hairdressing, she's like, "What hairdressing? Are you crazy? Stick to your engineering. Stick to your mechanical engineering." Now, as a youth man, I mean, I like, Jeff should know this. We had all aspects of our culture. You had, guys who followed big sound systems. I was what was called a soul boy back in the day. I followed soul music, but I did follow Coxsone, one of my favorite, sound system back in the day. I used to go to a club called Railway in Leighton, in Harrow Leighton, where big songs like Neville Enchanter. And so, but being a West End kind of young man, being in the West End, love fashion, love the clubs, love the ladies. Obviously, I decided that I'm not going to work for the man. That is the corporate world. I'm going to work for my people, with my people. And the only place I could have found a job as a young man back in the day, because as I said, I used to be in the West End all the time. I was in the West End constantly with my friends, going to all those clubs, Columbo's, Ronnie Scott's, all the soul clubs back in the day. And I went into the salon, and I saw a salon, an industrious business, at the time, Splinters of Mayfair, and that was it. So it wasn't to do with because men had this sort of thing with women's hair. It's a trade. So I wanted someone to show me. I wanted someone to guide me, to teach me, and I found that craft. In fact, I went in there to learn barbering. So I started as a barber. Okay, and I realized that barbering, cutting women's hair, because in that salon, I was a barber initially as a young man, and I realized that when you do women's hair, you get twice the amount of money. And so it was really a sort of entrepreneurial movement. I thought, no, man, I'm going to do women's hair. You know what I'm saying? Because you do a woman's hair, you could charge, well, of course, it requires more work, relaxing, cutting, conditioning, what have you. And so I did hairdressing, but obviously hairdressing, it's men do it more than just as much as women do it. In that salon, half the staff was half boys and half girls.
Just was there resistance to you going into that field or looking at women's hair?
It's all in my book. Yeah, my mother wouldn't have it. My mother and my sister. My sister laughed, and you can imagine what my sister said. My sister's a Rasta, and you can imagine what my sister said back in the day. I wouldn't say it on the radio show, but she said, "No, you're crazy." But they still realize that this young man is serious. He wants to do hairdressing, and I said to her, "Yeah, it's all men, it's all guys. There's nothing wrong with it." And obviously, and in those days, it's all young black guys from all over London, man, South London predominantly, and normal young black guys from the hood. You know what I'm saying? So the guy, I tell you, people may have some. Oftentimes, it's a peculiar. Why does he want to do hair? And so there's things attached, but no, absolutely not.
No, the reason I ask is because, I remember, taking my son to the barber when he was younger and stuff, and there might have been one female barber, if that's what you call her, in there. But the men were waiting on the other men. There was a resistance to having a female cut hair because I suppose it was assumed that the female didn't know much about how the men's hair grow, the directions that they grow in, the next line, blah, blah, blah. So there was a reluctancy on the part of the men to have a female cut their hair. So I wanted to know if there was any resistance from the women having a man do their hair. And actually, I'm just looking at the time here, and don't worry if we've got a bit more to discuss. We can just go over after the break, straight over, and carry it on in through to the record chamber. So if we want to go on for another half an hour, do feel free. But yeah, that's why I was asking whether or not there was resistance to males doing females' hair?
Not really, no. I think women, it's a strange thing, and not that women, some of the best hairdressers are females. Don't get me wrong. You got the brands. We talked about Olive Benson last week. We talk about Jeff's mother. I mean, brilliant hairdresser, and I'm the only one who could do her hair back in the day, and up until recently, before she passed, God bless her soul, Mrs. Pauline Haywood. I was, so she wants me constantly to do her hair, and I'd go to the house up there in Croydon to do her hair. Okay, so women, oddly prefer a lot of the times a man to do the hair. I couldn't explain why that is, but so there's no resistance there. And a lot of men these days prefer women, female barbers, because female barbers are trending. It's huge. But bear in mind, Genesis, most men's first barber was a woman. My mother was my first barber. My mother gave me my first haircut.
Sorry. We've actually got into that ad break, so just hold tight. We've got about 2 minutes before we come back on air. Once the ads come on, they can't actually hear what we're saying. So just as you started to talk about Mrs. Haywood and you being the only one to actually do her hair, we went into a break. So we'll just continue with where you left off from Mama Haywood and from there. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, Jeffrey, you wanted to ask something, didn't you?
It's a bit too late now. Don't worry. Over.
So we're just checking some of the messages as well, because there's some messages coming through. You know what I mean? Oh, are you open to people asking you questions as well?
Absolutely, that's why we're here.
I've just sent you one.
Okay.
So much about work. Very impactful.
That's fine.
Coming from Chummy. Very
She shouldn't say anything to me. Yeah. No, people are very, very interested in the topic. So that's what I was saying to Jeff earlier on, that if we have to just go through into the reggae chamber and just continue with it, we'll just do that. You know what I mean? And that will give us at least an hour of talk on the subject. So when it goes up online, somebody actually favorited it as well. They favorited the talk show.
Sorry, darling, I didn't hear that, Genesis.
Somebody favorite.
Yeah, they made it as one of their favorites, so they basically reposted it on their one.
Oh.
I only put it up yesterday.
Oh, interesting.
And they shared it and they put it as one of their favorites. And I was saying to Jeff, that's the first thing since we started GNR a year ago. This is the first thing that was the first thing I uploaded onto Mixcloud. So all the other stations that I've been on, I was uploading regularly, but I haven't done anything for a year in terms of editing and putting it on Mixcloud, Mix Y and Z. And I put it up yesterday, and within an hour, it already had 7 or 8 listens after I sent it round, and then people are now favoriting it. So that's really good.
I'm gonna have to go in now.
Okay, give us 10 minutes. Yeah, after about 10 minutes, and then. Okay, I'm going to get another jingle on. We're going to get back in this again.
Derek, we're learning so much from you, sir.
Thank you. Well, it's great to be on, Jeff. Great to be on, man. And it's a privilege. Thank you for having me on. I mean, I'm really enjoying this as well. I mean, there's no other way to reach our people than on our own community stations like these. It's brilliant.
Well, okay. If we could hold the line for us, please. Why can't I do it? So we're back after that short pause for the cause. It normally would be at this time, the reggae chamber, but I just thought, we just go on for a bit longer, even for another half an hour, and just, get some questions in, get some advice out, and give the opportunity for Derek Clement. He's still with us, and he's got a busy Saturday afternoon because the salon is running, but he's willing to give us at least another 15, 20 minutes of his time and give you some more information on the black hair. And Jeff was just reading out some information that you got, some texts that you got forward.
The message reads, so informative, so brilliant. I'm learning so much, especially about the law. Most importantly, very important. Well, you're going on for an extra time, brilliant. So Derek, you're reaching a lot of people, youngster.
Oh, thank you. And that's the point. That's the purpose, isn't it? To really ensure that listeners are being fed, empowered. Marcus Garvey said, and we must never forget that it's not about the kink in your hair, but he said to unravel the kink in your mind. So we have to not just talk about our hair, but the history of our hair.
The other thing is, though, I won't be able to sit in for the long talk because I only book for an hour. Sure. I mean, I've been very empowered and informed deeply and very intellectual about the history of here, and I must be one of the people.
Lost you there, Jeff, for a moment.
You lost me.
Just for a few seconds. I guess it was that disturbance again. But you're right. Thanks, Jeff. I mean, you're right. I mean, you are, again, like I keep saying, I mean, you come from a rich history of hairdressing because your mom used to provide wigs for the famous Vidal Sassoon. And when you say Vidal Sassoon is the god of hairdressing for Europeans. Yep. Like in our industry, we have some colossuses, people like Walter Fontaine from America, Winston Isaacs from London, of course, Carmen England, we talked about before, and people like Cynthia Jarrett from Birmingham, great legends. Not to mention the big names in Brixton like, what's the name, Miss Enoch Williams, brilliant, I mean, legendary hairdresser. So, Afro hair is a linchpin of our community, the economic linchpin of our community. So, of course, it's important. It's a wonderful industry. It provides for our boys and girls, well, men and women, careers. You send kids to school, you build homes, you pay mortgages. I bought my house doing hairdressing. You know what I'm saying? So it's an industry that we should not, and we should celebrate, and we should ensure that we keep it in the community because it's worth £250 billion a year.
Wow.
It's a lot of money. And big brands, Jeff, big brands are vexed. Oh, I've lost you for a moment.
Yeah, you're still with us.
Let me. Are you back?
Yep, still got you.
Let me share this with you right now. A lot of the big brands we're seeing in drugstores and pharmacies and beauty supply stores, they can't wait to get their hands on the Afro hair industry because they've monetized the game on such a level that even. Okay, are you there? I think I lost you again.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. There's a big brand, I think you know who they are, one of the biggest brands in London when it comes to hair. They're upset because they're saying that, there's something like 350,000 black salons in the UK, and they're not even getting 5% of that market. They're vexed, right? They're vexed they're not getting 5% of the market because they realize this is a massive industry, and why shouldn't we benefit from it? Why shouldn't we in our community benefit from it? Why shouldn't we buy black-owned products? People talk about the black pound. And look, if you historically think of the black hairdressing industry has made some of the greatest millionaires in the world. Hairdressing alone, more than any other industry, more than any other sector. And we know the first one was Madam C.J. Walker. No, the very first millionaire was Annie Malone. She empowered Madam C.J. Walker. Then you got names coming down, Comma Cottrell, George Johnson, the guy who owned Jet Magazine, and I believe at one point he owned Ebony Magazine. And there are many more black entrepreneurs who made their wealth in the hairdressing industry. So it's still a very lucrative industry, and we own that. We own our hair. So therefore, we should own the products that goes onto our hair. Not to mention the teaching of Afro hair. Okay, we do something called the Boys and Girls Club. We tend to empower young people. So our mission is always about, we call ourselves the keepers of the Afro realm, Rudy and I, and our team, right? And so our mission is to ensure that we share, we empower young people. We empower the women with regard to the hair, and it doesn't have to come from us. There are other women who does the same job. There are lots of famous women in London who teach and empower other women about the clients, about the hair care and the well-being of the hair. And so it's important to ensure that we teach the well-being of the hair, because our hair gives us our hair is our crown and our glory. Imagine that. Your hair is referred to by the Bible as your crown, and there's nothing greater than a crown. We just saw recently what happened to crowns.
Yeah, definitely. Just to let you know as well, John over there in the Catford side of town, he said he wouldn't have a problem with women cutting his hair, especially if it was Genesis. Well,
I like that, John. That's one of your fans there. Why not?
I feel, because I remember when my mother was being here, the boys did. We didn't want, because my dad did a terrible job, but then my mom, she tried to put it right, and it was that rest of school. But I've seen some female barbers and they.
I'm good, you know. I'm good.
You cut it.
Have you never seen my son's hair?
Did you cut it?
Yeah,
it's getting brilliant.
No, I redo his look. I'll come around a bit later on. To redo the locks and twist it up and put the oil and all those things, because he's got that, which I didn't realize. Over the years, I think it was called sebum, where it looks like it looks like it's
dry scalp.
Itself. Yeah, and washing, and it creates that dandruff. You know what I mean? And so having just done a little bit of research and stuff like that, and I'm actually working out what was good for his hair, or what was good to use on the hair, because there's certain shampoos that he was using, and I remember when he was younger, and even up into his early 20s, he never had that problem. But then it seems like with a change of shampoo and conditioners, it's created that dry scalp problem where it literally is like you've got to put the castor oil on the hair and just rub it in, just massage it in and carry on doing that. But yeah, no, it's and I think seeing, I don't know, like you said earlier on, Derek, it very much is a craft, because when you actually, and I see it even now if I do my daughter's hair, or if I do my hair, or somebody else does my hair, or whatever which way around it goes, when you see, and what I used to love, actually I'm jumping now, what I used to love going into the barber shop with my brothers when they were younger, and just taking them off to the barber and going in and seeing what the guy looked like, and then when they came out afterwards, it was like a transition. It was like a new person completely, and even the personality, the way they felt about themselves, the way that they looked. And going back to that empowerment of women, I know for myself anyway that I could put on the best arm, you know what I mean? But if my hair isn't done well, it doesn't feel like I'm dressed. You know what I mean? It's like your hair is like you mentioned earlier, it's the crowning glory. It just makes everything else just stand out. You could be looking rough, but your hair could be looking tough. You know what I mean? And then your whole look is just something else. Yeah.
Absolutely, Genesis. And as you said, salons and barbershops are a hub. We go to them to socialize, to interact, to connect. It's a community. And then you see the artistry, and barbers are brilliant. You go all over the world. I mean, if I go to Jamaica, Grenada, wherever I go, St. Vincent, the first place I go when I get there, I've got a massive beard, I pop into a barbershop and you connect with the brothers or the sisters. In fact, in Jamaica, it's even better, because in Jamaica, the barbers got women giving you little facials and fixing you up while you're getting your beard done. So, I mean, I love in Jamaica and New York, I found those, but the barbershops are brilliant. Black salons are brilliant. It is the only thing we have in our community where we could go into those businesses and connect with our people, socialize. It's brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah, definitely. I'm Jeff is about to go off, so I'm gonna let him bid you his farewells. And just to let you know as well, Jeff, myself and Derek was talking earlier on. Next week we're going to be looking at hair care issues and hair care for men, and also regarding things like shaving bumps and X, Y, and Z. So we'll talk about that. It's not just about the women; it's about the men too.
Yeah? I'm happy if I'm on
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, and I'll leave you in the capable hands. You be fine.
Well, absolutely, Genesis. I mean, of course. Lovely, excellent, Jeff. Thanks, Emil.
Yeah. And goodbye to all the listeners. But stick with Genesis. She's gonna be keeping very good.
Yeah, for about another 15 minutes or so, because Derek has got a salon that he's operating from, so I don't want to keep him too much from his clients. Otherwise, he'll be charging me for the extra time that he's. But yeah, and just very quickly as well, Derek, is there a vast difference between Afro hair and European hair? Because I know previously when you couldn't find any salons to go into, even for the men, you couldn't find any barber shops that were kind of close by. You had to travel out to go to find a barber's that would cater for Afro hair and whatever. Is there a vast difference between Afro hair and European hair?
Not really. I mean, black hairdressers, if you've noticed over the years, when you go past a black salon, they talk about Afro-Euro. So black hairdressers tend to, they could do any hair type. Bear in mind in our culture, wherever we come from, Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados, Grenada, it's multicultural. You know, Jamaica talked about out of many come one. You could have, there are black people with dead straight hair, curly, wavy, right down to coily and kinky. So when it comes to hair type, black hairdressers, black artists, black barbers have no qualms dealing with anybody's hair. On the other side of the equation, I think there is obviously it's now illegal. It's now a law that all hairdressers in London must do all hair types, and of course, Afro hair is I think is the main criteria. So a black woman can walk into any salon in the UK by law, and that hairdresser shouldn't discriminate. Okay. Whether that would work in practice, I'm not too sure. But the point is that's the law. So that's another law again. Now, you find that black barbers could do any hair type, and I'm sure